Ghana Tonight is brought to you by
Flamingo Paint, superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior.
Kel Charcoal Toothpaste.
It's the beginning of another week. Hello, good evening. Welcome. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live on News Abata Desawe Kanda, also live on TV3 Ghana on Facebook and DSTV channel 279. We're all across the world on 3news.com. I am Alfred Ocansey. Tonight, a sneak peek into President John Dramani Mahama's first fiscal policy document in his second term as president, as will be presented by the Finance Minister, Dr. Kasiela Tuforsin. We'll tell you what will likely be in there for you tomorrow. Stay with us here on Ghana Tonight. Also, some trade unions are expecting that the 2025 budget of the NDC government will address their long-term and long-held economic woes. We shall hear from some of them tonight. Also, expect projections and analysis of the budget ahead of tomorrow, and especially a talk about the taxes that will be abolished and the impact it would have on the revenue stream, and also how government intends to expand the tax net. This is a conversation that keeps coming up. Also, we'll build up strongly to the budget presentation tomorrow. We have a release as well from the Foreign Affairs Ministry about those who have been issued diplomatic passports who are still holding on to it. Well, stay with us here on Ghana Tonight if you're one of them. So there's some information from the Foreign Affairs Ministry for you. So, as always, you're an integral part of the conversation. Let's hear from you. The hashtag we're using is Ghana Tonight on Facebook and on X. Let's get talking. Let's settle for Ghana Briefs.
Government says it will allocate 80% of its common fund to tackle sanitation and other developmental programs in the metropolitan, municipal and district assemblies in its 2025 budgets. Minister for Local Government, Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs says there is a need to enable MMDAs tackle the growing concerns on filth and health-related issues currently experienced across parts of the country.
We are also trying to reintroduce the National Sanitation Day and the National Sanitation League. We are doing this because the President has pledged and directed that he is going to send almost the chunk, or about 80% of the District Assembly Common Fund to the district structures. So clearly, more roles have to be given to them.
President John Dramani Mahama has warned multilateral institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund to avoid interfering in Ghana's domestic policies, particularly concerning cultural and social issues such as LGBTQ+ rights. Speaking in an interview with Bloomberg's Next Africa, President Mahama argued that multilateral institutions should focus on their economic mandates rather than attempting to influence cultural values in Ghana.
I believe that multilateral institutions should avoid getting into cultural matters. This is a diverse world. We have different cultures. And so I don't think multilateral institutions should include, cultural imposition as part of their mandates. I don't agree with that. If they decide to pull it, well, it's their prerogative. But I don't believe that multilateral institutions like the World Bank and IMF should include in their mandates how people behave culturally.
Government says Ghana cannot claim ownership of the Agenda 111 health facilities due to the country's failure to meet the project's obligations. Health Minister Kwabena Mintah Kando maintains the previous administration failed in its inability to secure a stable source of funding to complete the project. He was speaking during a tour of one of the project sites at Bukuru in the Ahanta West municipality in the Western region.
We have expended $400 million US dollars. We don't have a single one of these projects in operation. And this particular project, you see, completing the project is one thing, and paying for the project to become the property of the state is another thing. As we speak, we need to cough not less than $9 million US dollars for this particular project. $9 million US dollars, which is about 140 million Ghana cedis.
In a renewed effort at leading unity talks between ECOWAS and the Sahelian states, President John Mahama says there are new perspectives that requires urgent attention. The sentiment was expressed on Monday when President John Mahama held bilateral discussions with his Burkina counterparts, Captain Ibrahim Traoré.
I assured Mr. President that at the next ECOWAS meeting, I would pass on what they have explained to me to the other leaders. I think there's a breakdown of trust amongst the leadership. It will take time to rebuild it, but we have to work on it so that we restore trust and confidence with each other so that we can work together, you know, even if we are not part of the same regional body.
A High Court has ruled against the Bank of Ghana's revocation of Ideal Finance Limited's operating license, citing procedural failures by the central bank. The decision effectively restores the legal standing of the defunct financial institution until the central bank legally challenges the ruling.
As more news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. This is Ghana Tonight. And as always, brought to you by Flamingo Paint and Kel Charcoal Toothpaste. Coming up next here on Ghana Tonight, what's in President John Dramani Mahama's first budget in his second term as president for you? We'll tell you because already we have some highlights and snippets into it. So stay with us every step of the way here on Ghana Tonight. And we'll be having a number of persons join us as we have a build up to the budget presentation tomorrow. But over the weekend, the Finance Minister, Dr. Kasiela Toforsen, has been busy on a number of things. And also, apart from the engagement and also giving pointers about what will be in this 2025 budget for us all. Over the weekend, he was in the market, Makola and some other places, interacting with market women, seeking their thoughts and expectations ahead of the budget presentation tomorrow. Take a look at this.
There are some markets, the business.
Good to see you.
That's Dr. Kasiela Toforsen there. So these market women that he spoke to would be expecting that their concerns would be reflected and captured in the budget tomorrow. And their concerns as well will be addressed by the budget tomorrow. I mean, we've been interacting with some Alfred Ocansey spare parts dealers as well. We'll tell you about the expectations as we go on. But apart from this market engagement that the finance minister did, he also had an X-space engagement with largely young people. And rightly so, because the MDC presented a youth manifesto ahead of the 2024 elections. And so young people also have their own expectations of this administration and the budget to be presented tomorrow. And let's give you just a brief of an answer to a question about expenditure cuts that he was asked yesterday during that X Spaces conversation. Take a look.
You'll be seeing some drop in primary expenditures because what we are seeking to do is to go through a very strong fiscal consolidation. You will see an increase in debt servicing because Ghana is resuming the payment of debt, because in the past 2 years, the government of Ghana was not servicing some debt, particularly the Eurobond debt servicing and all. But we have just resumed the servicing of those debts. And so you see an increase in the service obligation. If you adjust the servicing and look at primary expenditures, you see some significant reduction as compared to the outturn of 2024. That one, you should expect to see that. And I'll make it a point to announce the change in expenditure so that you will be satisfied and you'll be able to see that the government of Ghana has taken a bold step to reduce.
Well, so that's the Finance Minister, Dr. Kasila Tofos, and they're engaging with, the X platform and the people who asked him questions there. Essentially, tomorrow, this is the constitutional provision that he's going to be fulfilling for and on behalf of the President of the Republic of Ghana, John Dramani Mahama, and this is in Article 1791 of the 1992 Constitution. I'm going to put it on the screen right now. It says, the President shall cause to be prepared and laid before Parliament at least 1 month before the end of the financial year, estimates of the revenues and expenditures of the government of Ghana for the following financial year. So what happened in fulfillment of this Article 1791, if you recall, prior to the election day, December 7, the former finance minister, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, presented the first quarter budget for the year 2025. That's for this first quarter, January, February, March. Now, after this, there has to be a financial statement or a fiscal document to spell out the expenditure and revenue projections for the rest of the year. So that's what the finance minister is going to do. So this first part has been fulfilled by Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam ahead of that election last year. And then also talk about no taxation shall be imposed otherwise done by or under the authority of an act of parliament. This is part of the also the expectations going into this. So if there's going to be any new taxes at all, you hear the finance minister and a number of persons connected to him and to government talking about expanding the tax net. As to how that's going to be done, we will get to hear tomorrow, because we have been on this path of wanting to expand the tax net for only God knows how long, identifying the various areas in the economy that are not being taxed. So we expanded. That has to be done with data. Do we have the right data identifying those specific areas that are not being taxed but have to be taxed as well? There have been mentions of property tax rate. We know about it. The previous administration tried to improve the property tax regime. They had their own experiences and problems, challenges with that. How is it going to be done differently this time around? This administration needs money. They have promised to abolish some taxes. We'll tell you how much we're going to lose as a country if those taxes are abolished, all things being equal, tomorrow, as they promised. But the finance minister was quite clear and giving us some pointers of what to expect tomorrow in that X-Space conversation. This is it. School feeding grant is expected to be increased by some 33% per child, from 1 cedi 50 pesos to 2 cedis. Well, there are some stakeholders who think that this is still not enough. Because think about it, how much can you really cook with 2 cedis for a child? But then again, because of the economic constraints, the finance minister says they're being realistic about this expectation. So 33% increase from 1 cedi 50 pesos to 2 cedis per child for under school feeding. Significant budgetary allocation made to the agricultural sector. We would get to know the full details of the significant allocations. And then also the significant allocation made to support the sports development. And you heard Michael Ochieji and the team just before I came on air talk about the sports sector in this country and for instance, how the Black Stars are failing all of us. But they talk about inflation as well. The target is end of year 8%, plus or minus 2. We're talking about an inflation over 20% now. The target is that by end of year, we're going to see a single-digit inflation. That's one that many think is ambitious, but we'll see. Process underway to rationalize taxes at the ports. That's one of the major issues. We'll hear from Guta tonight. Taxes at the ports is killing business at the ports, and a lot of the businesses are relocating to other places in the sub-region because of the taxes at the ports. According to the finance minister, this budget is to address the taxes at the ports. We'll see. Economic Policy Coordinating Committee set up to reduce dollarization of the economy, and then also measures to stabilize the cedi to be announced. That is big for businesses as well. The cedi depreciation, it affects businesses, it affects you and I, because when the businesses are losing, it trickles down to all of us. When cedi is depreciating, it even affects fuel prices at the pumps. And already GPRTU had given indication they want to increase transport fares earlier in the year. Well, we'll see what measures would be put in place to address the depreciation of the cedi. And let's go on Zoom right now. And Joe Jackson is a financial analyst, the CEO of Delex Finance, is also joining us as we build up to tomorrow's coverage. Mr. Jackson, appreciate your time here on Ghana Tonight. The finance minister was quite clear, and he's facing reality. That is, it's not going to be easy, because apart from all this year, we're going to resume the servicing of our external debts, which always puts a pressure on the city, as we have seen over the period, is it not?
There will be challenges. This particular budget is going to be an act of balancing the promises that they made in the manifesto of taking away taxes, taking away the e-levy, taking away the betting tax, taking away some of the port taxes, simplifying VAT. Those reduce the revenue, bring down the revenue. But yet, Ghanaians want things done. So, and when you take the desire to take away taxes with the absolute commitment of the regime and the finance minister to keep expenditure low and fiscal deficits low, then you have a very high wire balancing up. This one is like running a wire between two ends of job 600 and trying to balance. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a really hard job, because you take away these taxes and revenue is going to fall. I've seen estimates by reputable top 4 accounting companies that says that we are losing up to 7 billion in the headline taxes you're taking away, e-levy, the betting tax, and so on. If you're losing that much without even simplifying VAT, wow.
I see. But you see, here's where the issue is. And you hear the finance minister, and we'll come to the taxes bit. Mr. Jackson, if you could reposition for us, because the connection is breaking up a bit. But you touched on the taxes to be abolished. That's another issue we'll look at. But he talks about expenditure rationalization as well. I mean, which specific areas or sectors do you expect expenditure to be cut so we can save in the next part of the year?
Oh, definitely. You're looking at, when we look at expenditure rationalization, the obvious ones, of course, the central government expenditure itself. I mean, the central government says it spends billions. They say, obviously, that is going to have to be cut. We're going to look at how much we're spending on supporting the state-owned enterprises, institutions like ECG in energy and the energy sector, how much we're spending to support and cut those expenditures. We're going to look at what we are doing for teacher trainees and for nursing allowances. And there's going to be an attempt, I'm sure there's going to be an attempt to streamline expenditure on education, which is one of the single biggest expenditures we make. So that's why we say it's going to be a balancing act. At the same time, I expect that there will be a major effort to bring in new people into the tax net, especially on the informal sector. So we should be looking at expanding the tax net, bringing people in the informal sector, imposing some new direct taxes, so that the tax revenue, the revenue to the government will go up. Remember that there is being a definite effort to say we have to start collecting at least 15% of our GDP in taxes. And we are coming from a low base of around 13% or even lower than that. So there are some major targets to be achieved in that sphere.
I see, and I appreciate you for this as always, Mr. Jackson. And let me bring in Professor Godfred Bobkin, is a professor of finance at the University of Ghana Business School, and also has been looking at this space quite closely. Financial analyst, Professor Bobkin, appreciate your time. And still staying on the matter of the expenditure rationalization, you've been consistent about our governance cost, how much money is spent on our governance structure, staffing, the presidency and so many other areas. Now, hearing the finance minister talk about expenditure cuts, which areas would you be expecting that this be done?
First of all, let me start off by congratulating the president and the government and also the Minister of Finance for embracing and responding to this call. We, as you rightly said, we have been at this for some time now. We didn't get positive response from the previous government, but I believe that the narrative is changing. If you judge from the manifestos of the two main political parties, they've pledged considerable reform to our governance and reduce costs. The MPP in their manifesto promised they will govern with 50 ministers. The NDC promised they will govern with 60 ministers. So far, the president has kept to his word. I think we have like 4 or so deputy more to go. I think that is encouraging. Of course, from our estimation, it could have been better. We should be able to govern with less than 40, because the trend across the continent, even the continent now, is lean government. Others are governing with 24, 31, 41, and all of that. So I think that is very, very good. And you also see that the president has indicated, and the steps have been taken already in some instances, that he is not only reducing the size of government in terms of the number of ministers, he has also contracted the number of ministries and also promised to cut wasteful spending. He has demonstrated that with the 58th anniversary celebration and all of that modesty. Yeah, so I want to say that it's a very good start, and I'm sure we can do better going forward in shrinking governance costs, which are largely wasteful and counterproductive, so that we can begin to free up space. Because when we talk about fiscal space, it will not be conferred on us. It has to be created. You cannot tax your way out of poverty. You first grow businesses. Taxation, Alfred, taxation is not just an instrument to collect revenue. Taxation is also an instrument to promote consumption and stimulate growth. If we look at taxation as a hammer, then we'll treat everything around as a nail. But taxation is not a hammer. It's an instrument to promote, an instrument to collect revenue. So that is how we look at it. And I think that, look, let me tell you something. Alfred, from the 2023 Appropriation Act, do you know the budgetary allocation to the office of the president in 2024? It was a little about 2 billion Ghana cedis. Does that make sense to you?
Well, that's a question that, I mean, the verdict and the answer to the question is out there. But Professor Bobkin, stay with me, because the next matter is on the taxes as well, that this administration promised that they were going to abolish ahead of the election. And this is the promise they made to the Ghanaian people, and which also influenced the decision to vote for them. And this is it. The NDC manifesto had 3 items, 10 of them they promised the Ghanaian people. Taxes, they said they were going to scrap 5 of them. And some tax handles, they said they were going to review 3 of them. And these are the specifics. They promised they're going to abolish the e-levy, COVID-19 levy off or scrapped, 10% levy on bet winnings expected to be removed or scrapped tomorrow. Emissions levy, well, with the emissions levy, from what we do know, no money has been collected as yet or has accrued to this levy because the modifications and all the plans that had to be put in place by DVLA and others, we understand, is still in motion. So we have no records of the emissions levy accruing any money. But import duty on vehicles and equipment imported into the country for industrial and agricultural purposes. All this, we expect that the budget would contain promises that have been captured in the NDC manifesto, Prof. Now, the concern is that quite apart from this, these 5, e-levy, COVID, and then the 10% on bet winnings, already there are many who are proposing otherwise. The IEA says, well, instead of taking off the 10% levy on bet winnings, scrapping it, reduce it to 5% because there's still some money you can get there. Well, we did some projections, and the research team, Weiss, Safo, and also Enoch, put these projections together. Based on this data, if the betting tax, e-levy, COVID-19 levy are abolished, government, all things being equal, will lose some 7.6 billion cedis this year. 1.2 billion from the betting tax, 2.43 billion from e-levy, 3.965 billion cedis from COVID-19 levy. Professor Bobkin, this is the cost to it. What are your expectations of this? Because this is the promise to the Ghanaian people. It has to be fulfilled, is it not?
I want to say that the expectation is very high, whilst one must also be moderate, reflecting reality, because it's the administration's first budget. And again, there is no legal, I'm not a lawyer, but my considered view is that there is no legal locus for party manifestos. So until the party manifesto or the promises in the manifesto begin to find their expression in the budget statement and economic policy, it can never be implemented. And so the 24-hour economy, the promise to move the economy from taxation to production, job for all and all of that, the idea is that becomes the marking scheme in evaluating the government's 2025 budget. Here, so when it comes to the taxes, I'm expecting e-levy to go like yesterday. I can't wait to say goodbye to e-levy. It was poorly designed from conceptualization and was abuse of power under our democracy to impose e-levy on the people of Ghana, households and businesses. So that has to go. If you look at the fiscal losses, and here I don't want to even view the removal of these taxes as losses. This should be conceived as incentives that government is offering households and businesses to promote consumption and stimulate growth. So if we look at it from that perspective, we will not remember our pain by removing these taxes, but we'll be counting our blessing because it will stimulate consumption. There will be uptake in Momo transaction. Jobs will be created along that value chain. The Momo turnover would increase. The Momo operators will make more profit. They will be able to declare higher taxable income, and then we'll get a corporate tax from that perspective. You will also be using that to stimulate your digital economy, because the digital economy is expected to grow faster than the traditional economy. So it will sound backward for any government to impose e-levy when the main growth driver going forward is digital. And whether we like it or not, the future of finance, the future of economics, the future of business, the future of money, the future of currency is increasingly digital. And that is why it was strange that government introduced e-levy along that growth path. Okay, so that has to go. COVID-19 health levy has to go. E-levy brought just a little above 2 billion Ghana cedis in 2024. That is almost how much we allocated to the office of the president or for government machinery in 2024 from the 2023 Appropriation Act. So really, you realize that we can easily close that gap. So I'll come to the expenditure side. So if you look at all these taxes, if we move them, we are looking at something above 7 billion Ghana cedis. In fact, if we increase the efficiency along the VAT, and the VAT here, I'm expecting the Minister of Finance to merge the straight levies with the standard VAT rate so that the distortion in the VAT deployment will be corrected. Because that 6% that does not allow businesses to claim the input cost add directly to the high productive cost base of doing business. So we can use the tax regime to actually de-risk the private sector and repair their balances. In fact, we can equally use the tax regime to de-risk the macro environment. When you make the tax regime friendly to businesses, friendly to taxpayers, and also as an incentive for attracting foreign capital and also building indigenous private capital. That is the way to go. That is how you build an economy with joy, not an economy that people would have to endure to go through.
I see. But let's face it, Professor Bob King, this amount which you projected right, if all these 3 tax handles are scrubbed, government will lose, all things being equal, over 7 billion. We put it at 7.6 billion. This government needs all the